The obsession with Israel, when we're talking about foreign countries,
it's hardly an obsession.
You're not talking about Chinese, you're not talking about Japanese, you're not talking about the Brits, you're not talking about the French. The question, what about the Jews? What about the Jews?
Oh, I'm an anti-Semite now.
So recently, Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz hashed it out on Tucker Carlson's podcast regarding, is AIPAC a foreign lobby? This one's going to be interesting. Tucker Carlson's not a big fan of AIPAC. He's a pretty big adversary of it. And Ted Cruz is basically the chief banner waver of AIPAC. So let's watch, let's react. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Can you feel the frustration of people, including your voters, every American, at the emphasis on foreign countries and the threat we supposedly face, a lot of which is fake, obviously, over the kind of slowly unfolding tragedy of what's happening to our country? The dollars spent, the aid packages to Ukraine to pay the retirement of civil servants in a country that we have nothing to do with, the endless support for Israel, very expensive, when people are literally buying groceries on credit in the United States. Can you feel like it's nothing against Ukraine or Israel or any other country?
All right, let's stop. You said the support for Israel, very expensive. How much support do we give to Israel?
Well, you tell me, you vote for it.
Yeah, it's about $3 billion a year is the military assistance.
It's actually more than $4 billion per year, and that was before October 7th. After October 7th, I think the U.S. gave about $20 billion last year, and I think we're on pace to do almost that now. Plus the bombing that the U.S. is involved with supporting right now, and then plus U.S. aid to other countries that supposedly benefits Israel is not counted in those calculations. For instance, I think the U.S. gives Egypt something like $3 billion a year just so it won't go to war with Israel to try to placate the tensions between them. So not exactly accurate there.
Is that the only assistance?
Yeah, we just have military assistance. Israel does not have additional assistance. There's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, and it's
Oh, yeah, just military assistance to the tune of the biggest foreign recipient of U.S. foreign aid in the last century. Ukraine's kind of cutting it close, by the way, now, I think, but it's definitely still Israel. But yeah, no, it's only military assistance.
$3 billion a year.
So what is it costing to support the bombing campaign to protect Israel right now from Iran?
So I don't know right now, but I'll tell you this. Let's go back to the touchstone on foreign policy, American interest.
He just evades that question. He's totally in support of this bombing campaign that links Israel with the United States at the hip, but doesn't even seem inquisitive about how much it costs. And I don't blame you for being able to get those figures right away. But if you're going to support a policy like a war expedition, a war strike, a military strike, you should probably have a decent idea of what it's going to cost if you're an elected official that's already on board with supporting it.
Our support, our military support for Israel is massively in America's national security interest, and it benefits us enormously.
Well, before we can make independent judgments about whether or not that's true, and I'm certainly open to it, I think we need to know what it costs. So what's the annual cost of defending Israel? Do you know?
$3 billion a year.
No, that's the aid. But I mean, the cost of the weapons, for example, the cost of U.S. personnel there, the cost of moving ships to the region, which we're doing right now, the cost of moving tankers to the region, all of that. Do we know what the cost is?
So look, the last week, I don't know. And there's some lag when the administration, under the Constitution, the commander-in-chief has control of the armed forces. And so President Trump has made some decisions that we'll know the cost over time. But I don't know the last week. That
you have to bear the costs before you pay them, according to Cruz. This is just reminding me of when, Nancy Pelosi said about the Obamacare bill. Well, you have to vote for the bill to find out what's in it. That's the same thing here, just on the other side of the political aisle. And regarding war, what do you know?
I don't have visibility on that. The annual cost is $3 billion. It's a 10-year memorandum of understanding, and that's the principal driver of the cost. But let me make a point. We get massive benefits from Israel. Israel shares. The Mossad is one of the best intelligence sources on the planet.
At selling us into wars, that's what he means to say, just like they used to sell us into the war in Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Yemen at times to bomb them last year, and now Iran. The regime change they've wanted forever. That's Mossad's doing. That's how they benefit us. They give us great intelligence that guides us into the road to hell on war.
The enemies of Israel, the people who hate Israel, they all hate us. It's almost a perfect overlap. And so if we tried to recreate, if we're just trying to defend America, we tried to recreate the national security benefits of our alliance with Israel, it would cost, I don't know, 30 billion, 300 billion.
So can you elaborate? And again, I'm going into this as someone who's always liked Israel and still does. But I also think at this point, given where we are, it's fair to ask rational questions about what the benefits are.
Good.
So does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they?
Well, it's not a reciprocal alliance. The U.S. gives Israel money, not the way around, not the other way around, to the tune of $4 billion per year before October 7th. Now it's just going to be more. It's already skyrocketed. So yeah, I would expect to receive all of their intelligence and not have to share any of mine with that kind of lopsided relationship. We're subsidizing their military excursions, including a war that the U.S. is participating in right now.
Spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. You don't think humans are all... Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest.
No, what's really naive, contrary to what Cruz is saying, is calling them the closest ally of the U.S. or the closest ally of the U.S. in the Middle East and just being fine with them spying on you. Well, that's not any kind of alliance I want a part of. That's an entangling alliance, a dangerous one, and history bears that out.
And every one of our friends spies on us, and I'm not...
Do you like it? That's my question. I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that. And
by the way,
I'm not mad at them. But you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know, hold on, I want to know your attitude. Yeah. You said that your guiding principle, in fact, the only principle, the only criterion.
I said guiding, the overwhelming, I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get huge benefits for it. And you want to see the clear...
We get dragged into the bowels of war and hell through it. We inherit all of the enemies of Israel, which, by the way, has been essentially that entire region. My entire life, entire foreign policy is based in some way on which wars Israel wants us to fight, which wars the U.S. and Israel are collaborating on to try to kill people or, monopolize trade privileges on oil, all this crap. And it's caused immense debt, led to soldiers blowing their brains out with PTSD, empire building schemes. There's been no benefits to U.S.'s relationship with Israel whatsoever. Not in any way imaginable. So it's absolutely outlandish. It's just as outlandish to hear him say this as when Lindsey Graham says, well, America's benefiting so much from fighting this war in Ukraine because, it doesn't have to be with U.S. soldiers. It's Ukrainian soldiers. Well, we're dragged in anyways, and it's going to be a prolonged war, already $200 billion down the drain. Same dynamic is true with Israel.
But I just want to stop on the spying for a second. That it takes place, as you know, and including on the President of the United States and several precedents. And I just want to know if that's okay and why is it okay? Wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry. I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
That's an isolationist
Sure,
mentality.
I would say don't spy on us. They're going to anyway. And by the way, the Brits are, the Canadians are. I don't think...
Well, I'm not for that at all. Okay. I think it's disgusting. But we don't actually pay their... we're not their most meaningful sponsor. We're not sort of paying for the operations of the British government.
So I got to say, and this is... It's weird... We're talking about isolationists, the obsession with Israel. Why is Israel...
Oh, I don't think I'm obsessed with Israel.
Okay, but I think a lot of people are. And the question, Israel spies on us. Well, so does every other country. Why are you mad at Israel?
Because Israel is the largest foreign aid recipient in the U.S. And we're dragged into their foreign policy schemes. It's not like there isn't complicit people on the American side in that. Clearly the neocons are, the Zionists are. People cheering rah-rah, Netanyahu's the grandest thing since sliced bread. We finance their military operations to the tune of no other country and no other vassal state. If it's even that, sometimes it seems like the U.S. is being led by this state. So that's the reason. It's not because it's Jewish people that live there. It's because they have such primal influence on our foreign policy to our detriment. That is the reason, Cruz.
I guess. Oh no. I'm hardly the one who's. I've never taken money from the Israel lobby. Have you?
Taken money from the Israel...
From AIPAC.
So AIPAC raises a lot of money for me, but it's actually a misnomer because the people who raise money are individuals. Right. So it's not the PAC itself, but they're individual members who believe in the American-Israeli friendship and relationship.
Is AIPAC a foreign lobby?
No, it's an American lobby. It's the AIPAC stands for the America-Israeli Political Action.
Yeah, because it's called that. It's an American lobby. Obviously, it's doing the bidding of the Netanyahu government now and the Israeli government in general. It's not an American lobby. They're going to say that because, people involved in AIPAC, they are American citizens. Well, they're collaborating with the Israelis on whatever Israel wants to do and influencing our elected officials in that direction.
What does it lobby for?
So, to be honest, not a whole lot effectively. Listen, I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Great.
And I've worked every day to do that. AIPAC, a lot of times, AIPAC, I wish were much more effective. Like, there are folks online who are in the fever swamp of terrified of AIPAC, and AIPAC...
I'm not terrified of AIPAC at all. You're the one who seems a little uncomfortable when I'm asking.
No, not uncomfortable at all.
I'm just asking what AIPAC does. My understanding, having known a lot of people who work at AIPAC, is that it lobbies on behalf of the Israeli government.
Wrong.
Oh, okay. When was the last time AIPAC took a position that deviated from Prime Minister Netanyahu?
All the time.
Name one.
Okay. Let me go back and give a little history. If you want to do it.
No, yeah, he's skirting this question. That's an excellent question by Tucker Carlson, by the way. Where is it where AIPAC pushed a policy that deviated from the Netanyahu government or the Israeli government? I'll tell you, it's not any. It's get embroiled in this war in Iran. It's get embroiled in this genocide in Gaza. It's continuing the funding throughout all of it, despite whatever you want. And guess what? What it also is. It's support these hate speech laws, the same thing the left wants to do, but only apply them to so-called anti-Semitism, which, by the way, includes criticism toward Israel. They're pushing for that too. Some states have already rewritten their legislation and laws to accommodate that. I think both Georgia and Arizona. There's at least 2 states that have done this to some extent, and that is the reason for it. This is what AIPAC is pushing. What is it doing that's refuting what the Israeli government says? He can't name an example. That's why he's skirting that right now. And he says, let me give you some context instead of actually answering it. He will not answer it because they do not.
Deep dive on AIPAC.
I don't. I want to do a shallow dive that gets... No. I want to get to the core question. AIPAC is lobbying for a foreign government. And I don't... It's not. It's lobbying for the United States.
It is lobbying for a strong U.S.-Israeli relationship.
Okay. So it's not has nothing to do with the foreign government.
It wants America and Israel to be closely allied.
Okay, but it's lobbying on behalf of the interests of another country.
So that's not true at all. And
it's not true.
No.
How much contact do you think AIPAC leaders have with the government of Israel?
No idea. I imagine some. I think the government of Israel is often frustrated with AIPAC because AIPAC's not nearly strong enough.
Do you think there's any coordination between the government of Israel and AIPAC?
Do they talk? Sure. If you're lobbying for more U.S.-Mexico trade, would you talk to people in the U.S. and Mexico and the government? Sure. Like if...
So I'm not mad about that. There are a million countries that lobby Washington. I like a lot of those countries, including Israel.
But AIPAC are Americans. They're not Israelis.
Hold on. There are tons of Americans who lobby on behalf of foreign governments. I know them. I'm related to some of them. I know how it works. I'm from here. So my question is not, is it outrageous that foreign governments lobby the United States? They all do, okay, including Israel. My only question is, why don't we admit that is what's happening? You're denying it, but it's true.
Yeah, and why
aren't they registered as a foreign lobby?
Because they're not.
They're not a foreign lobby.
No, they're not. And this is there's a fever swamp. Look,
it's not a fever swamp. These are very reasonable questions.
Yeah, it is a foreign lobby. They do collaborate with their American coadjutors to push the Israeli government's plan through law. There's other lobbies too. No one's saying they're not, but that is a foreign lobby. And guess what? JFK wanted to shut down its precursor. It was called the AZS, American Zionist Council, and make it register as a foreign lobby, essentially curtailing its financial power over elected officials. And guess what happened to him? He was assassinated. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. That's what happened. It's the same thing with AIPAC now, and AIPAC actually has a huge amount of control over our elected officials. I think if you look at the AIPAC tracker, that's a really good Twitter account, and it really seems like the voting patterns of Congress are essentially to the tune of AIPAC essentially owning about 500 of them, at least in terms of foreign policy as it relates to Israel. That is basically clear based on their voting records.
And you've accused me of being obsessed with Israel, which I'm not.
I actually haven't. I've said
and of being
isolationist
feverish about it, which I'm not at all. I find it's a very tender spot when you ask it, and I don't know why.
So, Tucker, all right, let's go back. I was first elected to the Senate in 2012. I came in Obama's second term. And I actually saw AIPAC be badly wounded in a way they never came back from. And the second term is when Obama did the Iran nuclear deal. And the Iran nuclear deal, I think, was catastrophic.
In truth, it was basically the only good foreign policy objective Obama accomplished, by the way.
And AIPAC went all in lobbying against it.
Yeah.
And
of course,
they failed. And I was the leading opponent of the Iran nuclear deal.
Oh, I know. They definitely failed, yes.
They failed. And what happened, the Obama White House told every Democrat, when I got here, there used to be real bipartisan support for Israel. That has largely disappeared.
That's not disappeared. That's the most bipartisan issue in Congress for the most part. Who's going to vote against Israel aid? Very few. It always sails through. Under the uniparty, there is mass consensus on supporting Israel throughout the left and the right. Or if you don't want to call them the left and the right because you're saying that's not the real left or that's not the real right, liberals and conservatives, neoconservatives and neoliberals, there is a mass consensus. There is a dissonant part of both the left and the right that doesn't agree. Thomas Massie among them, Rashida Tlaib among them, Ilhan Omar among them, Rand Paul among them, that doesn't buy into it. But by and large, they are owned. And yes, AIPAC did oppose that. Why? Because it would take the pretext off the table for regime change in Iran, what Netanyahu has wanted this entire time and what he's pushing right now.
And it's the Obama nuclear deal that caused it, because the Obama White House told every Democrat, pick. You either stand with Israel or you're a Democrat and you stand with the Obama White House. And almost every single Democrat member of Congress said, I'm a Democrat first, to hell with Israel. And then I watched as AIPAC, every one of those Democrats got reelected and AIPAC did nothing about it. And it dramatically reduced AIPAC's influence.
I agree. I watched it happen.
And by the way, I told AIPAC.
In truth, AIPAC has poured a lot of money into Democratic races that this was affected by, to be sure. Like, I don't have the exact empirics in front of me, but they've done their job in terms of keeping the Democrats aligned with Israel on aid packages. That's for sure. That can't be denied by anyone.
Like I said, look, the analogy, if the NRA was supporting a bunch of politicians and cared about the Second Amendment, and you had politicians that vote to confiscate people's guns, and the NRA turned around and raised money for the people who voted to confiscate guns, you know what? No one would ever care what they said again.
So you're making the case that AIPAC is not as powerful as people say it is, and I completely agree with you. I've watched that, and I'm not making the case that AIPAC is all powerful and they're running everything and putting fluoride in the water. I'm not making that case at all, because that's not true. I'm only trying to get to the question of what AIPAC is, and I don't think you're being straightforward about it. AIPAC is lobbying on behalf of the interests of a foreign country, and they're not registered. And you're saying, no, that's not true. You're saying that they don't coordinate with the Israeli government.
Of course, I coordinate. They talk with them. I don't know what they do. I can tell you.
But why don't you care? Isn't it meaningful if a foreign government...
Hey, I talk with Israel all the time. I talk with foreign countries all the time.
But
we know, Ted. We know.
Law is, and a lot of people have been prosecuted under this law, that if you are lobbying on behalf of foreign government, you must register. That's it. It's really simple. And I don't know why, if I'm working for Malaysia or Qatar or Belgium, and I'm working on behalf of its government's interests through a group of Americans who are representing the friendship between those two nations, I have to register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And if I don't, I can go to jail. And people have gone to jail, including people I know. So I don't understand why we don't just be honest and say they're lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. They're coordinating with the government. You know that that's true.
That is not only not true, that is false.
They're not coordinating with the Israeli government?
Do you know how AIPAC raises money?
He goes on to a different question, of course.
What?
For elected officials, like what they do, like what the actual mechanics is?
I get it. I mean, they go to people who are sympathetic to Israel and raise money and then send it to candidates who agree with them.
So what they'll do is, so in my last election, AIPAC endorsed me. And they'll host a fundraiser. And they'll host a fundraiser in Dallas or Houston or Atlanta or New York or LA.
No way. AIPAC endorsed you, Ted? No way. I don't buy it.
And they'll do a fundraiser and they'll get someone who will host it. And it's usually a business owner, lawyer, doctor, someone who hosts it. And you get typically at an AIPAC fundraiser, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 people who live in that city.
Right.
Who care about a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. Yeah. And if they have, 50 people, each of them writes $1,000 check and you raise $50,000.
Yeah, I've been to an AIPAC fundraiser. Okay. I know what it looks like.
But that is not, and by the way, there's no representative of the Israeli government there. You have, when you're in Dallas, you're meeting with...
This is such a false and silly conversation. I know all this. The question is are AIPAC's goals shaped by the goals of the Israeli government to any extent?
Yes.
Okay,
that's a really simple
from
question.
Lobbying on behalf of.
It's a simple question. Are AIPAC's goals shaped by the goals of the Israeli government? And
yes.
I'm just going to ask you a question straightforwardly. And if you say no, I think we both know that's not true.
Okay, are they shaped by?
Are they coordinating with the Israeli government?
Are they talking with them? Yes.
The Israeli
Israel
government?
Directing them? You want to talk about Farah?
Look at him just dance around this so much. It's so ridiculous. Just admit it, Ted. You're proud of it anyways. You said at the very beginning of this discourse that, hey, I made it a goal, one of my chief goals, to be the most pro-Israeli U.S. senator in the Congress. He said that. And then he has the gall to say that, AIPAC doesn't do the bidding of that government and other people are obsessed with Israel. It's other people that are so obsessed with Israel and he can't understand why. It's so ridiculous. I think he did that change within about 10 minutes.
The law on lobbying on behalf of someone, It is, I hire you and you lobby on behalf of me. I direct you. Does Israel direct AIPAC? No, they are not lobbying on behalf of them. Do they care about them? Yes, but...
Do you think that it's just interesting because what you're now describing in a very defensive way, I will say, is foreign influence over our politics.
No.
And you began, and it's so transparently obvious to everybody. I don't know why you would be embarrassed of it. You've said that you are sincerely for Israel. I believe you. I don't think you have some weird agenda. You
That's
seem
what he
to
said.
be sincere.
By the way, Tucker, it's a very weird thing. The obsession with Israel, when we're talking about foreign countries,
it's hardly an obsession.
You're not talking about Chinese, you're not talking about Japanese, you're not talking about the Brits, you're not talking about the French. The question, what about the Jews? What about the Jews?
Oh, I'm an anti-Semite now. Senator,
you're asking the questions, Tucker. You're asking, why are the Jews controlling our foreign policy?
Senator,
that's what you just asked.
He didn't. He's concerned about foreign influence in the government. I would never relate all Jews to what Israel's doing in that criminal government. Otherwise, I wouldn't host videos by Max Blumenthal and Glenn Greenwald and Dave Smith and Jeffrey Sachs, all of which are Jewish and despise what Israel's doing. It's not about the Jews. It's a criminal government that happens to have the U.S. tied around its finger. That's what he's talking about.
Hardly saying that. And I have
That is exactly what you just said.
Well, actually, I can speak for myself and tell you what I am saying.
Good.
On behalf not simply of myself, but on of my many Jewish friends who would have the same questions, which is to what extent, and it's interesting you're trying to derail my questions by calling me an anti-Semite, which you are.
I did not.
Of course you are. And rather than be honorable enough to say it right to my face, you are in a sleazy feline way implying it or just asking questions about the Jews. I'm not asking questions about the Jews. There's nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. It has to do with the foreign government.
Isn't Israel controlling our foreign policy? That's not about the Jews?
You said...
Correct. That's a criminal government that doesn't represent all the Jews. It's not. So again, this is a case where Cruz outlandishly and absurdly claims that other people are obsessed with Israel when earlier in the speech, what did he say like his chief mission was, or one of his big prerogatives was when he entered the Congress? It's to be the most pro-Israeli senator. He said that, but then just minutes later, you're obsessed with Israel. People that question these wars and all these stupid policies, they must be obsessed with Israel. and just implying it's anti-Semitism, that's just the common trope to shut down anti-war dissent. It always has been. It always will be. It continues to be right now.
I'm asking
And by the way, you're the one that just called me, I think, a sleazy feline. So let's be clear.
It's sleazy to imply that I'm an anti-Semite, which you just did.
No, I just said, why is that the only question you're asking? You answer it. Give me another reason. If you're not an anti-Semite, give me another reason why the obsession is Israel.
I am in no sense obsessed with Israel. We are on the brink of war with Iran. And so these are valid questions.
But you're not asking about Iran or the
If I can finish, you asked me why I'm obsessed with Israel.
Yep.
3 minutes after telling me that when you first ran for Congress, you elucidated one of your main goals, which is to defend Israel.
Yes.
And I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel. I don't see a lawmaker's job as defending the interests of a foreign government, period. Okay. Any government, including the ones that my ancestors come from. So that's my position. That does not make me an anti-Semite. And shame on you for suggesting otherwise. And I mean that. And that's low, and you know it's low. So why don't you just answer my questions
I'll
in a
answer any
straightforward, rational way? You certainly have the IQ to do it.
So shame on you is cute, by the way, Tucker.
It is. It's not cute. I'm offended. I'm obsessed with the Jews. You just told me
you just called me a sleazy feline.
It is sleazy to imply that I'm an anti-Semite for asking questions about how my government is run.
You want to count how many questions you asked about? What about the Jews? What about Israel? What about AIPAC?
I never asked about the Jews. This has nothing to do with the Jews, whatever that means. This has to do with a foreign government.
Exactly. I'm so proud of Tucker for this moment. This is the most fiery I've ever seen him with a guest. And man, I think he's mostly knocking it out of the park. He's actually much more charitable to Israel than I would be. But he's totally right that, the assertion just goes to like this Jewish conspiracy if you dare to criticize Israel. And he'll have nothing to do with that. And he's in the right on this.
And once again, shame on you for conflating the two. They have nothing to do with each other. I'm talking about the influence
Israel
of
and Jews have nothing to do with each other?
All Jews, or an attack on all Jews, which I am not, nor would I ever be undertaking now. I'm not attacking anybody.
By the way, that's who Iran wants to kill, is all the Jews and all the Americans.
And have they tried? Has anything gone by those inane Death to America chants that they always bring out as propaganda? Chants do nothing. Bombs do. Iran hasn't attacked any of its neighbors. Israel's done that multiple times. To Lebanon a few times. To what's happening in Palestine, in Gaza right now. It's a genocide. It's not even a war because there really isn't oppositional combatants at this point. And now they're doing it to Iran. Countless times. And, there's claims that Israel has in Syria. Iran is playing defensive, and I would too if Israel and the United States was at my throat the entire time. They don't have the capability to project the might to endanger the U.S., never have, and yet we're still here to pretend like they're the evildoers that are launching these wars. No, Israel launched this war.
I'm totally opposed to that, okay? But now, because
except you don't want to do anything about it.
Decisions need to be made.
We can talk about those decisions.
And I plan to.
Good.
But I just want to get a sense of whether you think, having described yourself as an America First person whose only criterion for judgment on foreign policy is America's national interest, to what extent you're influenced by a foreign government, which gives you a lot of money through its lobby, and you're claiming this has nothing to do with the foreign government. They're not coordinating. Yes, they're spying on us, but it doesn't bother you. And I'm sort of wondering, what is this? This is one of the weirdest conversations I've ever had.
I'll tell you what, and I'll answer any question you like, but let's try to...
Are you going to call me an anti-Semite again or no?
Let's try to ratchet down the temperature a little.
You're the one who went to motive. I'm asking honest questions.
I'm
just asking questions. Yes, that's it. That is what I'm doing.
Right.
Look, right AIPAC, when I ran for the Senate, AIPAC didn't support me. I supported Israel before they supported me. I'm happy to have their support because they share my objective.
No, but you're missing it. I'm not suggesting that you're bought and paid for. I'm not saying that.
I want to go back.
I'll say that. I'll say Ted Cruz is bought and paid for by Israel and the Israel lobby, primarily manifesting in AIPAC. I'll be happy to say that. So here's where Tucker is much more charitable to Ted Cruz than I would be.
You're sincere.
I want to go back and take the transcript because you just said a minute ago, I'm slightly paraphrasing, but are you lobbying for a foreign government because they pay you a lot of money? That's basically what you said. So you are suggesting that.
Let me just be clear about what I think. Your views seem totally sincere.
Yes.
You take money from people who agree with you.
Yeah.
I believe that. I even
take money from people who disagree with me.
I'm only trying to get to the question of to what extent is the U.S. government influenced by other governments? And it's a lot.
Of
and it's
course,
hardly just Israel. It's hardly just Israel. I don't think Israel's the main one.
Yeah, here's where I'll disagree with Tucker. Israel is the main foreign lobby influencing U.S. politicians. We know that based upon foreign aid. Just look at the metrics of foreign aid and how many U.S. congressmen specifically go out of the way to say they're pro-Israel, and their voting records indicate that. They sure are the main one. There's no other one, to be sure.
Lots of governments. China is a massive influence on this city.
And it's a huge problem.
As you know, I couldn't agree more.
Well, I don't know that China has a massive Chinese lobby in the U.S., but, you know, I guess if you're saying that the criteria is, do we trade with the Chinese and is that beneficial to them? Yeah, that's beneficial to the Chinese, not necessarily the government. But you can say that about any country, I suppose. Certainly not in terms of foreign policy objectives are we influenced in any similar direction by the Chinese as we are the Israelis.
And there are lots of other. The UK, which is a truly sinister place, in my opinion, as a ethnic Brit, I can say. I think that's my view. Maybe you disagree.
I think they're on the wrong path. I love
Whatever,
the Brits,
without
but their government has
without
gone
even
off
getting
the
into
rails.
that. I'm just saying I don't think Israel's the only one. But it's the only one where you're instantly called an anti-Semite for asking questions. And it's also the only government that no one will ever criticize. And I
People
find
criticize Israel every minute of every day. Like, the only government that people will not criticize, Rashida Tlaib just tweeted out calling Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal.
Good on her. That's accurate. But he's right. You can, criticize Israel under the law sometimes. Some states are trying to change that. I think Georgia and Arizona have already done that. I think those are the two states. But you do suffer sincere ramifications for criticizing Israel, unlike criticizing any other government. In fact, you can boycott individual American states. You know, the right and left do this. Like, if they have an immigration issue, they're letting, immigrants in. So we're going to boycott California from the right, and the left says, well, hey, Arkansas has these really strict abortion laws, has essentially outlawed abortion. We're going to boycott Arkansas. But if you boycott Israel, that is the time where you're naturally called an anti-Semite. All the dissidents know this, even if they're not anti-Semites. Anti-Semites do exist, but the dissident world is full of people that just despise the Israeli influence. It's not about Jews in particular, a very small minority of people, and much of which are represented on sock accounts and have no political wherewithal or credibility or power whatsoever. And that's the truth.
Rashida Tlaib? No,
you said no one will criticize.
No, I'm talking about Republicans that I would vote for, including you. And I'm saying, whatever. I don't even like talking about Israel. What I care about, I never do, because it's not worth being called anti-Semites from AIPAC recipients. But
that's a good shot, man. I can see why this debate is so fiery on both sides, man. The snide remarks on both sides. But this is what needs to happen. This would never happen on the corporate media. And so, props to Tucker for running his show like this. And I guess even Ted Cruz for not getting up and running away and acting like a total wokester that he's completely, incensed by.
Now we're on the verge of joining a war. And I just want to be clear about why we're doing this.
All right. So, and let's get into Iran momentarily, but you suggested it was a strange thing that I said a minute ago, that when I came into the Senate, I resolved that I was going to be the leading defender of Israel. And what you didn't ask is why. Yes. So let me tell you why.
No, you said I was obsessed with Israel, and you had just told me that, your driving motive to get to the Senate was to defend Israel. I'm like, I don't think I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel.
Okay.
I don't even think about Israel.
Tucker, words matter.
Uh-huh.
And you know that. I said I resolved to be the leading defender of Israel, and you said your driving motive, the reason you're in the Senate.
You want to be the leading defender of Israel. I would think if I ran for Senate, I'd be like, there are people dying of drug ODs on the street.
My drive.
Absolutely. This debate is just about the best I've ever seen from Tucker. This is probably the most fiery guest he's ever had. I hadn't seen this segment yet. I'm kind of blown away by how fierce it got. I have seen some clips from the other segments. I'll maybe put out some of those as reaction videos too. But yeah, Tucker's right on point here. Like I said, he's a little bit more charitable toward Israel's government than I would be, but Ted Cruz is bought and paid for by AIPAC. It is a foreign lobby just wearing a mask that says we're Americans, we're America first, but what they really mean is Israel first. They mean that the U.S. and its elected officials should push forward the agenda of the Israeli government on every topic. Notice that there was never a time. There's ample opportunity for Ted Cruz to point out where AIPAC dissents from the Israeli government. But he never does. Why? Because they don't. AIPAC wants to push the agenda of the Israeli government, whether it be through aid, through these hate speech laws, alterations of that code, supporting Israel in this strike on Iran. That is the agenda. It's not an America First agenda. They should be considered a foreign lobby, forced to register as such, and that would curtail their power immensely, but their power is as such. It is a powerful enterprise. And John Mearsheimer wrote the best book on this topic in my mind, called The Israel Lobby. It's actually just called The Lobby, but excellent book that he co-wrote. I always forget the other author, but that book is incredible, well worth reading. But I do want to hear what you guys think. Is AIPAC a foreign lobby? Is there any merit to what Ted Cruz is saying, or do you think Tucker Carlson is mostly right? Let me know in the comments below. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and please consider supporting me as a YouTube member or as a Patreon patron. That would help me immensely, and I graciously appreciate. Bow to you if you do that. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and the good old no more empire. Peace out, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.